Trying to get Shifty's gang to stop is next to impossible. The reason I go to the India Burger is come is that I felt that there was an understanding between me and the people who worked there that we're just people. We didn't do any of this stuff that's true. It doesn't have any meaning. It's just comfortable for me, and the gang was there and they gave me a burger with an onion reminiscent of the E. coli. I couldn't help but think of it. I was also thinking about who was behind the piracy of the Jaime Carbonell wardrobe. Back in the day, Milnes was cranking on about, the vodka is the spirit is the vodka translation mishaps. What's that mean, Jaime? Stuff. He was with Bronstein and Austria. They did the implant and the extrusion. That's obvious by who they had on hand with Swimmer. But Brutal Cop was a comedian guy. He was Pete Catano. Brutal Cop was really brutal. He was like Comic Connor, the showman apparatchik behind the Kelly incident. But he did Seen by the Sea, which has the deaf kid in a Pittsburgh shirt. And he did Brother, which was obviously an allusion to Obama, even though nobody ever said that. You do the history of cinema research about Brother by Catano. So he knew all that. They had, the black Nazis with Toon. Made a real laugh out of, Toon said, just wait, Toon and Gabriel, he'll make a bid for Goto. And then we'll have him in our pincher grip. No. But I think when you look at Pittsburgh, you're talking about Adolf Grunbaum or Groinbaum. Adolf Grunbaum was one. They have a logical positivism school to be reckoned with. I mean, they're on first call up, Dugan to talk to. And Heidegger, I don't know exactly where he intersects with the Vienna Circle, but their papers are there. The meetings at Telgte take place at Pitt. And Alfred Hitchcock's gang, Bing Crosby, was the board of directors of Pirates. Bing Crosby, Hitchcock's gang was like George Romero. It's named in the papers that emerged at Pitt. He worked on North by Northwest with Hitchcock. So you can see the philosophy. It's a philosophy of using cinema for trickery to address people's misperceptions and make them enlightened through trickery. If you like magicians and fascist psychology, you'll think that's so wow, in Pittsburgh fraternities think that's so wow. But Martha Gellhorn, when she wrote to me, I'm not going to tell you who she is. If you don't know, it's sad. She was brilliant. Amazing, amazing woman. Easily one of the greatest honors of my whole life was to be written to by Martha. Easily. She wanted to make clear that she didn't want to believe me. She'd seen the liberation of Dachau, but I was in a Holocaust survivor community, and she may have learned that Primo Levi killed himself when I wrote to him about what happened. I don't really know, but she wrote to me when I was living in Montana. This was when the Berlin Wall came down, and a German girl gave me a piece of. There's a section of it in Seattle Center too. She didn't let me keep it, but she put it in my hand to hold. It was like a moon rock. It was really electrifying. And the ideology of the times was obvious. Bush was so incapable of having a matching magnanimous gesture. And of course, then Clinton ruined everything with his expansion of NATO. But Ivan Svitek, at the time we're talking about, the Czechoslovakian Velvet Revolution, which is largely forgotten for some reason. Václav Havel humanized Russians. That's one of the reasons why they were willing to leave, was he didn't turn them into boogie monsters. So even though he chummed up with Bush, which was a mistake. Ivan Svitek is very telling. He had a Czech partisan awareness that academics, to avoid being fired or taken prisoner, had to make certain compromises, and he was careful about those compromises to keep enough chin upness, enough of a Czech nationalism that it wasn't a hopeless compromise. And Havel had party members in his plays who turned out to be the source of brilliant compromises that worked out for people who were in the resistance. He had his share of martyrs. Jan Patočka weighed particularly heavily on his spirit because Jan Patočka was elderly when he agreed to go to jail, and he died in jail, sad to say. But Ivan came to America, and he was pretty clearly an illustration of the problem with Bush and Clinton, because he led Prague Spring. So you had this guy, he was one of the leaders, one of the major influences of the intellectual statement of Prague Spring, which was put down by Russian tanks. And he was lionized by the West. Oh, see the intellectual who in dissent, who stood up to the Soviets and was crushed. But when he got to America, he said he felt like Galileo because he was trying to convince people that Marx was a genius. And they were like, they couldn't make a magnanimous gesture in return for glasnost to avoid coming to loggerheads with their own creature from the id, which is what they conjured from Russia. Anyway, I think it's important to understand the intellectual essence of how I was, to use their word, pigeonholed. These people are not intellectual amateurs. They didn't just do this. They thought it all out. I mean, they created a vacuum that could disentangle into the deranged illusion that I could have said von Lenin, which is just like imbecile drawing Martin, not Heidegger. Let me see what his name was. I'll look up the Reichstag fire. Van der Lubbe, Marinus van der Lubbe, and they would, like, with their little pet chemistry set of Van der Graaf generators, they created a queer bait, they called it, and they said, wait till he finds out what he could have. And it turned out to be, if you want to look for the intersection of Axis Hollywood with the Vienna Circle, you start with George Romero, which, not to be taken lightly, is the dude behind Night of the Living Dead. I mean, we're talking about metaphors for metaphors for metaphors. That is not to be taken lightly. A noted observation was down by the supernova, a place called IAB, I think. I caught it out of the corner of my eye. It needs to be looked into.